Nicholas Perry was born in Ukraine on May 19, 1992, but he didn't live there for long as his biological parents gave him up for adoption when he was still a baby. Fortunately, an American family adopted him and he ended up moving to Pennsylvania. Since childhood, Nicholas showed an interest in art, and something you probably didn't know is that this love for art would lead him to study violin at university. However, his childhood was not easy due to his relationship with food. He loves it, but his excessive consumption of junk food led him to develop problems with his weight. As a way to help him, his father forced him to change his diet, although this caused Nicola to hate vegetables and healthy food in general. Additionally, his weight made him a target for bullying at school, which further worsened his relationship with food, a problem that would follow him for much of his life. Over time, as he grew up, he decided to adopt a diet that excluded all animal products, partly to address his weight. This decision introduced him to the vegan community, whose diet, practices, and lifestyle were gaining popularity at the time, especially on social networks like Facebook and YouTube, which would become very important. Later on, when he moved to New York to pursue his dream of playing in a Broadway orchestra, he faced intense competition and pressure. Ultimately, these difficulties proved too much for him, and he ended up giving up on his attempt. On the social network Facebook, Nikocado joins various vegan groups where he meets a man named Orlin, with whom he shares a passion for the vegan lifestyle. After talking through text messages for a while, they become a couple, and Orlin convinces Nicholas to move to Colombia so they can live together, something he agrees to, and soon he moves to be with his boyfriend. Once there, Orlin convinces Nikocado to start his own YouTube channel. Our protagonist thinks it's a good idea, so he creates it and decides to call it Nikocado Avocado. This is mainly because of his love for avocados and because at first his videos revolve around veganism. Every now and then, he uploads videos of himself playing the violin, but most of them are about vegan diets. In many of these videos, he appears with his parakeet, who becomes a beloved figure among some of his fans. Nikocado starts taking YouTube seriously and becomes an active figure, although with few followers and few views. He speaks passionately about veganism with the goal of inspiring others to follow the same lifestyle, promoting healthy eating. Thanks to veganism, he manages to maintain a healthier weight. But Nikocado takes his new diet to an extreme by counting calories and obsessively measuring his body fat percentage. This is something that many members of the YouTube vegan community do, and Nikocado falls into the same vicious cycle of restriction as they do. Eventually, he realizes that his veganism has become a problem for his health. And this, combined with the fact that there is a lot of toxicity among YouTubers, pushes him to give up this lifestyle. In 2016, he uploads a video explaining why he has decided to quit veganism, citing the health problems his diet has caused him. He says he feels tired all the time, has no energy, and is depressed. He says that, at least for him, he has realized that this type of diet is not something sustainable in the long term. When the news comes out, many of his followers express how disappointed they are with his change in philosophy, but he stands firm, knowing that it is a necessary decision for his physical and mental health. It's a time of many changes in his life because in addition to leaving veganism, he moves back to the United States to build a life with his partner. And it's at this point that instead of uploading videos about veganism, Nikocado chooses to make them about a genre that is just starting to gain traction in the United States, a genre called Mukbang. This type of video is about to make him world famous, but also to put his life at risk to the point of almost taking it away. Before continuing, you need to know exactly what a mukbang is. You've probably seen this type of video before, videos where one or more people record themselves eating. Usually during the video they eat excessive amounts of food for one person, or sometimes unpleasant food, but it always revolves around eating. What's peculiar about this is that this genre didn't start out as the grotesque content we all know, but actually had a much nobler origin. If you're not familiar with it, let me explain it to you. Its origins date back to around 2009 in South Korea, when the live video platform called Africa TV launched a new program centered around this practice, which they called Mukbang, a name that combines the Korean words for food, muk, and show, bang. But anyway, what is a mukbang? In short, it's sitting in front of the camera and eating large amounts of food. Historically, South Korea has been a society with a strong sense of community, influenced by Confucian values that prioritize family, hierarchy, and social cohesion. However, in recent decades, a combination of economic, technological, and cultural factors has transformed social dynamics, leading to an increase in isolation and loneliness among citizens. One of the most decisive factors has been the country's rapid economic growth and industrialization after the war. This development, while it brought prosperity, also introduced a highly demanding work culture. Due to this culture, people began working long hours and intense professional competition emerged, which caused many to experience a decrease in the time available to socialize with friends and family. In this sense, the system in South Korea has promoted an individualistic mindset focused on personal success, often at the expense of community relationships. Added to this is the rapid urbanization. As more people move to the cities in search of opportunities, the traditional social structure based on tightly knit communities began to fragment. In urban areas like Seoul, where the cost of living is high and living spaces are small, face-to-face interactions have decreased, giving way to a more solitary lifestyle. Another relevant factor is the advancement of technology and how it has promoted digital culture. South Korea is one of the most connected countries in the world. It has an advanced internet infrastructure that has facilitated the digitalization of many aspects of daily life. Like everything, this has its good sides, but it has also contributed to a phenomenon of digital isolation, where many people interact more through screens than in shared physical spaces. A symptom of these changes is the transformation in the way people eat. Traditionally, meals have been a time for family gatherings in Korean culture and in many other cultures around the world. However, with the fast pace of life, many people have stopped sharing meals with their families and have started eating alone. This led people to become interested in watching live broadcasts of others eating, perhaps as a way to virtually recreate the experience of eating at a table in the warm company of others. In other words, mukbang. Now then, this is where Africa TV comes in. Starting in 2009, users of this platform began doing live broadcasts in which they eat together with their viewers while talking about their day or answering their questions. During the broadcast, you could see the hosts eating typical Korean dishes, but in a normal way, since at this point the grotesque and excessive consumption we now associate with mukbang hadn't arrived yet. At first, this type of content was mainly a way to find community and connection. The idea was to have many people watching this live show while eating so they would feel less alone and could start conversations with other users. But if this started out with good intentions, how did the phenomenon turn into things like Nikocado Avocado? Well, the content on Africa TV became so popular that by 2010, some Korean YouTubers, knowing they could make a lot of money, started uploading their own mukbang videos. The problem is that the video thumbnails and the videos themselves, where people ate grotesque food or consumed it in excessive amounts, started to attract more attention from users, which began a vicious cycle of intensification or radicalization. This phenomenon is one of the reasons why we end up seeing videos of people eating until they burst, people smearing their tables, faces, and clothes, or beautiful women eating things shaped in very suggestive and disgusting ways, or even going so far as to eat live animals like squid, octopus, or snails. All just to get the clicks, the views, the attention, and the money. A kind of radicalization driven by social media algorithms. Keep this idea in mind because it will be important later on. The mukbang trend exploded in popularity when the YouTube channel React published a video about the topic. In this episode, they brought together some of the most well-known YouTubers in the United States to react to mukbangs. For some, the enormous amount of food made them feel extremely disgusted, while others even said it seemed like their dream job, eating and getting paid for it. That's how, at that moment, mukbang arrived in the United States. Now that we have the context of what this phenomenon is and where it comes from, we can go back to Nikocado, who also wanted to join in on this trend and uploaded his first mukbang in 2016, just a few months after posting his video explaining why he decided to stop being vegan. In this video, Nikocado eats an enormous amount of macaroni and cheese, something that stands out since he was one of the first American YouTubers to take part in this mukbang trend. His first mukbang is watched by far more people than any video he had uploaded before, so he realizes that he has an opportunity in this internet niche. And from this moment on, his channel becomes mainly a mukbang channel. Nikocado appears in the videos with increasingly larger amounts of fast and greasy food, which makes sense considering that by this time he was already back in the United States, a country plagued by health problems caused by poor diet and the prevalence of fast food. Over time, his videos show a clear change, especially in his personality. At first, Nicholas was still the content creator behind the Nikocado Avocado channel, but little by little he began to exaggerate certain aspects of his behavior. At first, these were subtle details, a more dramatic reaction, slightly exaggerating certain emotions, and starting to eat larger quantities and more eye-catching foods, so to speak. The beginning of this change happens in the video titled "I Don't Want to Be Vegan Anymore," a topic he had already discussed before. But now you can see that the way he approaches it is much more sensationalist. On the thumbnail, Nikocado appears crying with a red face, something we now tend to associate with this character. If we compare the two videos in which he talks about his vegan past, in the first one he appears calmer and more in control of himself, while in the latter he takes a much more polarizing stance, claiming that veganism is bad for everyone and directly attacking the vegan community. This is done with the aim of provoking a reaction from his audience, regardless of whether it is positive or negative. The incredible thing about all this is that his little experiment actually works, and this video becomes the most viewed of all the ones he has uploaded. With this, he realized that drama equals views on social media. So these sensationalist videos are his way of testing how much attention he can get. The amount of attention he starts to receive is massive, and even the American newspaper The Daily Mail writes an article exclusively about him. For Nikocado, this is irrefutable proof that drama is the easiest way to get more attention, since this is the kind of content that the YouTube algorithm pushes the most. This is how the character Nikocado Avocado was born. He didn't appear overnight but was built up little by little. His emotional outbursts, provocative attitude, and instability gradually became part of his identity on the internet. And the more extreme his performance was, the more views he got. With each video, his character grew bigger, more chaotic, until it completely overshadowed the person he once was. From this moment on, his content changes. Now he appears in his videos crying, fighting with Orlean, and making inflammatory statements like those about veganism to anger people and get more views on his videos. After all, they say there's no such thing as bad publicity, only publicity. What many people wonder about Nikocado's case is why he puts himself in these kinds of situations. People don't see the mukbangs, his tantrums, and emotional breakdowns as something to aspire to or even as worthy of sympathy. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's the morbid curiosity that keeps them glued to his content. They want to see him humiliate himself in front of the camera, eating grotesque amounts of food while he cries or fights with Orlean, who now has a series of nicknames for him. Some of these are Ogre, Shrek, and Hippopotamus, which makes it clear that Nikocado's body has become one of the main features of his persona. At this point, it seems that both Nikocado and his audience have experienced something called algorithmic radicalization. Now, I'll explain this topic in more detail. This is a phenomenon that occurs on social networks due to the way algorithms select and promote content. These systems are designed to maximize engagement, comments, likes, shares, views, because more engagement means more time spent on the platform, which translates into higher advertising revenue. The problem is that in most cases, the content that generates the most engagement isn't the most informative or balanced, but rather the most extreme, controversial, or emotionally provocative. This happens because strong emotions like outrage, surprise, or morbid curiosity make people interact more with posts. For content creators, this could create a perverse incentive. If their most provocative material is what gets the most reach and visibility, it's only natural that they start leaning toward that kind of content. Likes and attention are gratifications, rewards for certain behaviors, and if this type of behavior is what receives those rewards, then this behavior is reinforced. And the more a behavior is repeated, the more it becomes ingrained in one's personality. And this vicious cycle also affects audiences because as people repeatedly consume more polarizing content, their perspectives can become more radical without them even realizing it. They get used to a more intense kind of discourse and in many cases end up demanding more of the same from creators since milder content stops being sufficiently sensational or entertaining. In this way, consciously or unconsciously, platforms can push creators to increasingly cross the line just to stay part of the conversation. This could be positive in certain cases, such as when it leads to better quality, but in many others it is not. It can reach the point of harming others or even putting their own life at risk. In the case of Nikocado Avocado, we can see how his content evolved from something relatively normal to something completely sensationalist and extreme. His videos gradually turned into a spectacle of excess, both because of the emotional emptiness he personally felt and because that was what generated the most views and what both the algorithm and his audience rewarded. Now that he knows that the most dramatic content is what sells the most, Nikocado focuses on that. For example, Orlean starts appearing in his videos more often and even proposes to him during one of the mukbangs, creating an emotional and sweet moment between them that touched their followers. But the proposal isn't real. Orlean had actually proposed to Nikocado in Colombia, but now they recreate the scene in front of the camera to get more views, turning their lives into a spectacle. From this moment on, it's impossible to know what's real and what's acted in Nikocado's videos. The line between reality and fiction becomes so blurred that it's impossible to know for sure which parts of what we see in his videos are the character and which are Nicolas Perry himself. Over the years and up to this day, Nikocado uses his relationship with Orlean as one of the key points to create content. They get married, but shortly after, they upload a video in which they talk in detail about how Nicolas cheated on him and ruined their relationship, only to say in the same video that they've talked things through and are back together. In short, it's clear that Nikocado's new content isn't centered around food, even if it seems that way at first glance. His main driving force is drama. Anyway, he finds a pattern for uploading his content that guarantees him the highest number of views. Nikocado keeps uploading his mukbangs, sometimes accompanied by his husband Orlean and other times by his parakeet, but every so often he uploads a video with an inflammatory title and a thumbnail of himself crying, face red, and making an exaggerated expression. Unsurprisingly, these videos are the ones that get the highest number of views and his channel keeps growing more and more. Seeing that this type of content sells best, Nikocado feels compelled to keep going in the same direction, taking his channel to new extremes. There is a particular series of videos that reveal some of the tricks Nikocado uses to reach the level of fame he now enjoys, and that is getting involved in fights. But remember, fame doesn't mean people have a good opinion of you, it just means they know who you are. Everyone knows Nikocado, but he has a terrible reputation thanks to getting into fights with some of the most famous YouTubers of those years, including Trisha Paytas and Stephanie Su. Nikocado creates drama with these two YouTubers with the intention of stirring up controversy on social media and attracting more attention to his channel. The problems with Trisha and Stephanie aren't genuine. They were fabricated by Nikocado to increase his follower count. Little by little, Nikocado becomes an expert at manipulating attention on social media, since he knows how to draw attention to himself. Now then, going back to the video series I was talking about, these were apparently recorded in the same room, and in them you can see the emotional decline that Nikocado is experiencing. The videos are about his relationship with Orlin, as has become customary, and about his mental health issues, which by this point seem to be on the verge of collapse. But it's not just his mental health that's deteriorating, his physical health is as well. In the videos, you can see a drastic weight gain, and Nico doesn't stop complaining about his body. This brings us to another reason why many of us know him, or at least have heard about Nikocado Avocado, his obesity. The type of content Nikocado creates causes him to gain weight, and quickly. In every video, he consumes thousands of calories, which negatively impacts his health, both physically and mentally. Weight gain has many adverse effects, ranging from less dangerous issues like stomach pain to more serious illnesses such as cardiovascular problems and limited mobility due to stress on his joints. His health problems become so numerous that, in the videos, you start to see him having to use a mobility scooter to walk around supermarkets. Additionally, in other videos, he can be seen with an oxygen mask, which is commonly used to treat sleep apnea, a disorder that Nikocado now suffers from due to his poor health. Seeing Nikocado with this device, his followers fear the worst, that he doesn't have much time left in this world. They feel that his physical health has deteriorated so much that he has reached the point of no return. All of this is partly due to continually making increasingly extreme content to generate more views. Algorithmic radicalization is not only limited to turning content creators into increasingly extreme figures within a specific niche, such as physical challenges or sensationalist content. It also plays a crucial role in the way people consume information and form their beliefs. Digital platforms are designed to maximize audience interaction and retention, and algorithms quickly identify what kind of content keeps users on the screen longer. The problem is that moderate content with nuance and balanced reflection almost never generates the same emotional reaction as more extreme content. Radical stances, whether political, ideological, or conspiratorial, provoke more intense responses: outrage, fear, euphoria, or a sense of belonging, which drives more interactions and keeps people hooked. So if that's what works, creators will do it more, people will consume it more, and the discourse will gradually become more radicalized. This phenomenon creates what are known as echo chambers, where the algorithm filters content and reinforces the user's beliefs, showing them more and more information aligned with their worldview, while hiding or discrediting opposing viewpoints. In this way, someone who starts by watching a video with a slightly controversial opinion can end up, without realizing it, consuming increasingly extreme content. There have been many cases of people who, without realizing it, end up becoming radicalized through the content they consume on the internet. From far-right groups to radical left-wing movements, or even conspiracy theories and all kinds of fanaticism, the pattern is the same. A user might start by watching content about legitimate social issues and over time find themselves drawn into more aggressive discourse that promotes hatred, misinformation, or even violence. You probably have a close example in your family or group of friends. Maybe you've lost someone because of algorithmic radicalization. And by lost, I don't mean that they've died, but rather that it's no longer possible to have a calm discussion or dialogue with them without the conversation ending in arguments, or at the very least without them being able to try to understand a viewpoint that goes against what their ideology dictates. But anyway, now getting back to Nikocado's case. Around this point in the story, we start to see some strange things. These types of masks that Nikocado starts wearing in his videos are actually meant to help him breathe better at night while he sleeps, not during the day, which suggests that he's doing it to attract attention by using sensationalist topics at the expense of his own health. But health problems aren't limited to the physical. Obesity can also have repercussions on the mental health of those who suffer from it. And this is exactly what happens in the case of Nikocado Avocado. He has shared in interviews that his lifestyle has caused him severe anxiety and stress that he often doesn't know how to deal with. And this is where his addiction to food comes in. As I mentioned at the beginning, his relationship with food was never healthy, not even when he was a child. And now the type of content he produces has deteriorated it even further. Not only does he depend financially on eating excessive amounts of food, but food has also become a coping mechanism for his mental health problems. Instead of dealing with his emotions in a constructive way, he turns to food as a way to relieve stress, anxiety, or emotional discomfort, which reinforces a destructive cycle that affects both his physical and mental well-being. Here we're talking about food, but we could swap that word for any kind of substance and it would still make sense. It's like people who use alcohol, for example, to cope with anxiety, stress, or frustration. In that sense, it's as if food were a kind of drug. It might sound a bit extreme, but people really can become addicted to food, and it's an increasingly common problem. There's a book called Sapiens that explains the causes of this phenomenon very well. It turns out that for millions of years, our ancestors lived in a world where getting food wasn't so easy. So when they found something to eat, especially foods rich in calories, their brain would send them a clear signal. Take advantage, eat as much as you can. Why? because back then they didn't know when they'd find food again, and storing fat was a crucial advantage for survival. The more energy they could accumulate, the more likely they were to survive times of scarcity. To reinforce this behavior, our brain developed a reward mechanism, a system based on the release of neurotransmitters like dopamine, which generate pleasure and satisfaction every time we perform actions beneficial to our survival, like eating. In this case, the brain created a link between calorie-rich foods and the feeling of well-being. In other words, every time we consume something high in energy, we experienced pleasure, which motivated us to repeat the action in the future. This mechanism was essential in the past when food was scarce. The problem is that even though the reality for most human beings has changed, the brain is still wired the same way. High-calorie food is easy to find and is everywhere, but this system still works the same way. We are still programmed to seek out those calorie-rich foods like fatty or sweet foods. And so, if we consider that this type of food releases chemicals that generate pleasure and well-being, it's easy to understand why someone living with pain, whether physical or emotional, might turn to it as a refuge. Each bite acts as a temporary relief, offering a sense of comfort that, although fleeting, becomes hard to resist. Over time, this reward cycle reinforces the habit, leading to an increasing dependence until it becomes an addiction. This is possibly one of the reasons that may have influenced Nikocado Avocado to fall into this problem. But this is not an isolated case, it's something that happens to many people. This has been well exemplified in the show My 600-Pound Life, a reality show that explores the lives and struggles of people with obesity and food addiction. In this exploration, participants are asked about their past, and it's very common for most of them to share stories of abuse, bullying, abandonment, or other traumatic experiences. The vast majority have found refuge in food as a way to escape pain, which creates a self-destructive cycle of emotional dependence on it and a deterioration of self-esteem, leading them to turn to food again and again for momentary relief. Over the following years, Nikocado's content doesn't change much. He keeps uploading mukbangs, videos of himself crying, throwing tantrums, and even gets involved in fights with other YouTubers and influencers to stay relevant. But from one day to the next, Nikocado disappears. He uploads a video in February 2024 and then all traces of him vanish, as if he had literally disappeared due to the health problems he was going through, especially sleep apnea and incapacity. His followers think he lost the battle. However, and to the surprise of the whole world, the Nikocado Avocado channel uploads a video on September 7th, 2024 titled 2 Steps Ahead, or in Spanish, Dos Pasos Adelante. In this video, we see a man who doesn't look like Nikocado, as he has a slim torso and arms. He is wearing a panda head, which when removed reveals that it is none other than Nikocado Avocado himself. But now he looks quite slim. With this video, Nicholas reveals a secret he had been keeping for a couple of years: his impressive weight loss. He looks very different. Now he is much slimmer and has decided to shave his head, but his attitude remains the same. At the beginning of the video, he gives a monologue that seems to have been borrowed from a movie villain, in which he claims that his channel, Nikocado Avocado, is the biggest social experiment he has ever done in his life. He says that the internet is like an ant farm full of bored ants ready to consume any distraction they find. According to Nikocado, his master plan was to become a caricature of himself for the entertainment of the masses, thus gaining fame and money. Remember I told you that one of his tricks was to record content far in advance? Well, that's exactly what he did this time, only now for the first time he admits it on camera. All the content he uploaded over the last 2 years was recorded well in advance, all with the goal of taking the audience by surprise with his transformation, a plan that worked out perfectly for him. You're probably wondering, what was he trying to prove with all of this? Well, what he says in the video he uploaded is so cryptic that it's hard to say with complete certainty whether the social experiment was something genuine or just another way to get attention. There are those who claim that his supposed experiment is nothing more than a marketing strategy to maintain his relevance on social media, and others who think there was never any experiment at all. There simply came a point where he realized it wasn't sustainable and chose to change his life, and in the process gave the world something to talk about. But whatever the case, if this experiment worked, it's because we live in a society of spectacle where anything can become entertainment, even a person's self-destruction. The philosopher Guy Debord described the society of the spectacle as a world in which reality is replaced by its representation, where what matters is not what happens but how it is presented. And on the internet, that means life itself becomes content, a product designed to capture attention. The line between what is real and what is fabricated becomes blurred, and in this process we lose the ability to see the people behind the screens as anything more than characters in a story we consume passively. Nikocado understood this better than anyone. He knew it didn't matter how grotesque or excessive things became as long as the audience kept watching. His downfall was not an accident, it was part of the spectacle. But what's unsettling is not just what he did, but what we did. We turned his downward spiral of self-destruction into viral entertainment. We watch someone sink and we don't feel empathy, we feel morbid curiosity. We don't ask ourselves if he's okay, we ask how far he'll go. We're not worried about whether there's a limit. We're concerned about whether his next video will be more shocking than the last. Because in the logic of spectacle, suffering only matters if it's appealing, if it's extreme enough to generate engagement. If all of this was an experiment, the conclusion is clear. Social media is designed to keep us hooked, even if what we're watching is someone's self-destruction. In an environment where radicalization is rewarded with greater reach and visibility, the line between genuine concern and entertainment becomes increasingly blurred. Sometimes public opinion about this kind of content seems a bit contradictory. We are an audience that claims to be outraged but can't stop watching.